Hey, fancy listeners. Francesca Hampton here, and I am honored that you took time to tune in once again. And I'm committed to sharing content that will make you glad you did. So, welcome to the Fancy Thoughts Podcast, a weekly podcast designed to give you perspective, insight, and encouragement to release the greatness inside of you. I want you to live fancy life, where you are fostering achievement, never compromising you, because someone is waiting for you. Before we move into this week's Fancy Thought, let's remind ourselves what we talked about last week. In episode 21, we talked about build your brand. We said we needed to identify and recognize the special quality or feature that makes us easily recognizable and different from others. And then we build upon that, which makes us unmistakable, undeniable, and well-defined. We said someone needs the unmistakable, distinct characteristic of you in order to receive that which you have to offer that's different from everybody else, because someone is waiting and someone needs you. And now for this week's Fancy Thought. I must first admit I am really excited to be back to our weekly release of these episodes. I'm excited to bring content to you each week, especially as we go into the latter part of the year where people are beginning to revisit their goals. They're beginning to rethink their go forward steps and plans. And this is a great time to continue to provide you with thoughts and perspective to help you to accomplish all that you want to accomplish in the rest of 2022. And so with that, I bring you episode 22. Now, this episode is extremely important to me for a couple of reasons. One, of course, the topic itself, I'm very glad to be talking about because it's something that I know I personally am still working on and going through. And I believe that it's something that you will be able to benefit from, if not now, in the future. But the other reason that this episode is important to me is because of the number. So as I've mentioned in earlier podcasts, and you may also see in the show notes, last year I did a version of Fancy Thoughts, and they were done via video. They were posted on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And those videos are still available. If you're interested, just head on over to the show notes and you'll see a link to the Fancy Thoughts podcast playlist on YouTube. And you're welcome to listen to all of the things that we talked about last year. But the reason this is important is because due to many different reasons, we did 21 episodes last year. And I am so excited because this is episode 22. So as we revamped the whole Fancy Thoughts by making it a podcast available on all podcast platforms and changing it more to an audio medium instead of a video medium, the idea was that I'd be able to get out more content to you. And I'm excited that I am achieving that goal even in this episode when I bring to you episode 22. So I'm just taking a moment in the background to celebrate that big victory because to me, it is the epitome of everything that we're talking about. It's the epitome of building my brand. It's the epitome of recognizing that someone is waiting for me. It's the epitome of getting out of my own way and taking a step, continuing to press, and all of the many different things that we've been talking about throughout these Fancy Thoughts over this past year or throughout this year. So I'm excited and I thank you. I am so grateful to each and every one of you that has chosen to continue to listen to this. Whether you're listening for the first time, whether you're listening sporadically, whether you are listening with me every single time an episode is released. Either way, I am excited and I'm grateful that you have chosen to give me a few minutes of your time on whatever day that you're listening. And I'm hoping that as you're listening, as you're taking it all in, you are finding things that you're able to easily implement that are helping you to achieve your goals and release your greatness. And so, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Episode 22 is Choose Your Battles. I believe this is so important and so underrated. Many times we use this cliche and say, pick your battles or choose your battles. And we think about it in a myriad of different ways. But today I want us to focus on this a little bit more because I believe it is imperative in order to release your greatness and to go forward and accomplish the things that you set out to accomplish. I want to first start with the definition of battle. Because how can you choose something if you don't know what we're all talking about? So let's make sure we're on the same page. The word battle means to try hard to do something in spite of very difficult circumstances. I'm going to say that again. To battle means to try hard to do something in spite of very difficult circumstances. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I want you to have that in the back of your mind when we say choose your battles. But there's another definition of battle I also want to bring to your attention. And that is to battle with an opposing group means to take part in a fight or contest against them. So we have battle when you're trying to do something and battle when you're up against someone, right? Those are the two types of battles we're going to focus in on today. I read in a blog by Personal Excellence that says, choosing your battles means to be selective of the problems, arguments, and confrontations that you get involved in. Instead of fighting every problem, you save your time only for the things that matter. And I think that is so important, and it is truly a summation of what it means to choose your battles. When you're trying hard to do something in spite of very difficult circumstances, when you're coming up against opposition from someone else or something else, and you take part in a fight or a contest against them, it's important to make sure that what you're doing or the fight that you're in is the fight that you really need to be in and that you should be spending time on. Because you want to make sure that your time is spent on things that matter. Our time is precious. Of all the commodities that we have, time is the very thing that we can never get back. No matter how much time you spend in something, whether it was good or bad, that time can never be reclaimed. Now you can expedite your progress, but the very time that you spent in that endeavor, in that time with someone, in that time in something, you can never get that specific time back. And so it's important that we value and we put priority on the time that we spend and what we spend the time on. In that same article, they reminded us that every battle takes up time, and every problem you wrap yourself up in takes up time and energy. And that's so important because a lot of times we think a battle is small. We think a battle is insignificant. We think that the issue that we may be involved in or focusing in on is not really taking up that much time or it doesn't really matter. But in the long haul or in the grand scheme of things, it is. And when you look back on what you do in a day, what you've done over the past month, what you've accomplished over the past year, you don't want to look back and say, I spent 2 months focusing on this one issue in this current battle that I actually didn't need to spend that much time in. And we'll talk about that a little bit more and how to recognize that and what to do. But it's important that we're understanding off the cuff from the beginning that we are responsible for choosing where we spend our time. And we have a right to be selective in where we spend our time. The other thing that we have to recognize is that many of the things that we're battling over or many of the things that we're battling in really aren't necessary. They don't have a long-term impact. It's really not that deep. If I could say it that simple, it's really not that deep, and it's not something we need to fight about. It's not something we have to strive hard to go through. Sometimes the things that we're battling so hard on are just things we either need to accept or let go. And in one of those decisions, we may soon begin to recognize that it's really not that deep, and it's okay. How do we determine what we choose to fight and what we choose to battle against? There's a couple things that we have to ask ourselves whenever we're faced with an obstacle, a challenge, a problem, a difficulty. The very first question that we have to ask is this really important? Is this something that really deserves an extreme amount of my time, my focus, my energy? And in that, is it taking away from something else I should be doing? I'm actually going to separate those two. So the first one, is this really important? For example, this happens often in relationships where, you may have a conflict you may have a contradicting opinion. You may want to do one thing and the other person may do something else. And sometimes I'll say we as the stubborn people, if that relates to you, that's okay. I can't see you, so I don't know. But I will just say for those of us who are a little bit stubborn, we can often get caught in our way or stuck in our way. And we will fight to prove that what we're saying is right or is true or is important or is valuable or whatever it is that we're trying to prove. And at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, is this really important? If you say that Swiss Chalet is better than KFC, And of course, I'm using a very silly example, but I want you to kind of picture this. You say KFC, Swiss chalet is better than KFC. And I say, actually, it's not, because KFC is known around the world. Many different countries have KFC. They have the best biscuits ever. Swiss chalet has just some bread and they have weird gravy. And I'm just using this as an example because I think Swiss chalet gravy is funny to me. I'm American. And so the gravy, and I say that with air quotes, that they're providing is just very different than what I'm used to. So I am using my podcast to express my opinion on this matter. Anywho, if we were to get into this extreme debate about it, right? And we spend 10 minutes going through the different options and the different offerings that both of these two restaurants have. And then it begins to cause discord between us. Now we're fighting because I don't think you're really listening to me and you don't think I'm really listening to you. And you don't value my opinion as an American and I don't value your opinion as a Canadian and all of these different things. And then 20 minutes has passed. Was this really important? Was this really something that we needed to spend time on and cause discord and disunity over? Absolutely not. If you like Swiss chalet, eat it and be happy with your life. If I like KFC, I'm going to eat it and be happy with my life. It is not something that requires a battle. Now, again, this was a very simple and somewhat silly example, but I can tell you that this relates to many of the other things that we debate about, argue about, and are in conflict about. Is there an area in your own life? Is there a conversation that you've had over the past week that if you look back at it and you asked yourself, is that really important? Your answer would have been no. I'm sure there's something in there that you might be able to relate that to. And so I'm encouraging you that when you're beginning to get into that confrontation or you're beginning to get into this debate, you have to ask yourself, is this really important? Is this going to change the dynamic of life? Is this really worth my time? Is this the best place for me to be spending and exuding my energy? When we entered into that discussion about Swiss chalet and KFC, because we were spending some time together or we were on the phone together and maybe we don't have an opportunity to spend much time together. And so now we've taken the 20 minutes of the only hour that we have until the next time we see each other, talking about something that is irrelevant. It's just a matter of opinion. Neither one is right nor wrong. So the question is it really important? And is this the best use of my time? Is this the best way to spend and exude my energy? The next question to ask is, am I the best person to deal with this? Now, this kind of goes down a different kind of angle because there are certain times when we're getting into something and we are spending an extreme amount of time. We're trying hard to do something in spite of very difficult circumstances. And the reality is we're having such a hard time because we are not the best person to deal with or resolve this issue. For example, we talked about this once before in the episode of help. Sometimes we are working on a problem or an issue and we may have limited knowledge about it. We may have limited exposure or experience in it. And instead of asking for help, we spend day after day, hour after hour, or a long period of time trying to work through an issue. When if we had just asked someone else for help, they may have been able to resolve the issue, fix the issue, complete the task, or do whatever was necessary much quicker, or give us the steps that would allow us to do it much quicker. So the question is, in that battle where we're talking about trying hard to do something in spite of very difficult circumstances, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, am I the best person to deal with this? Is there someone else that might be able to do this better, easier, quicker? And then can I give it to them? Or can I involve them so that we can do this much easier and we can move on to something else? Another question that you should ask yourself when you're faced with an obstacle, challenge, or problem is, will this help me achieve my goal? I can't tell you how many times I get distracted in 30 minutes, right? I often say squirrel, right? If you've ever seen either the meme or the cartoon, it's like, a little cartoon thing and a squirrel runs across and all of a sudden it's usually a dog or something of that nature. And they immediately get their attention directed or diverted to that squirrel, even though they were doing something else. And so many times, we're like that. So you're having a conversation and then something happens on the other side of the room and you like automatically starting to talk about that or interested in that or like, what's going on there? I have that challenge every day, all day. right? And so sometimes I can easily start doing something else in the middle of doing one thing because for whatever reason, that other thing all of a sudden became immediately important. I'll give you a simple example. I'm getting ready for work, or I'm getting ready for church, or I'm getting ready to go somewhere. And I'm in the midst of doing this, and I realized I haven't folded some clothes on the other side of the room. I had maybe taken out some laundry and I hadn't folded them yet, and they're in a bag. And I had to go look for something. Maybe I was looking for a shirt or something of that in that bag. And so instead of just taking the thing out of the bag, I now decide I need to start folding some of these clothes in the middle of me trying to get ready. Now, again, I'm using a very simplistic example, but the reality is I'm trying to do something that has nothing to do with me achieving my goal of getting out of the house, of going wherever I need to go. Me folding all these other clothes that I don't need right now is not helping me to achieve the goal of leaving to go wherever it is that I need to go. So, and in the moment, I'm thinking like, oh, I need to hurry up. I've only got like 15, 20 more minutes to get ready. I'm really trying to do this other thing, but I've become distracted by this unnecessary task. Does the task need to get done? Yes. But does it need to get done right now? No. Will doing this task right now help me to achieve my goal? No. So that means that it is a battle that I need to not fight in this moment. And as you're going through and releasing greatness, as you're going through and stepping into the things that you want to accomplish, into your purpose, into your dreams, into all of those things that you have maybe put off or have finally said today is the day or now is the time, you have to be able to recognize when battles or activities or tasks come up and they begin to distract you from what you are trying to accomplish in that moment. Because this moment is the only one that you have. Again, as we talked about in the beginning, time is the very thing that you can never get back. I can't get back those 15 minutes that I spent folding clothes, and now I'm running late. I can try and drive faster. I can try and get there quicker, but I can't get that time back. So now I'm trying to squeeze and maximize the time going forward to recoup the effort that I spent before. In whatever way that relates to you, I'm asking you, make sure that the efforts that you are spending and the time that you are putting in is going to actually help you achieve the goals that you've set for the moment that you're in. And the last question to ask yourself when you're faced with an obstacle is, will this impact a relationship that I want to keep? This relates even more so to the definition of a battle with an opposing group, which means to take part where you're taking part in a fight or a contest against them. You may be in a situation or a battle with a person. It could be a family member. It could be a spouse. It could be a child. It could be a coworker. It could be a random person in the street for whatever reason. And the biggest thing you need to ask yourself is, will this battle, will this discussion, will this argument, will this disagreement impact a relationship that I want to keep? For example, if you are having a disagreement with a coworker, they believe, one thing or another, whether it's related to work or not, and you've determined all of those other questions. Is this really important? We probably need to at least come to some level of agreement. Is this the right time? Is this the best use of my time? I'm not so sure. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Am I the best person to deal with this? Well, this is just an agreement or a disagreement between two people. So we're just having a conversation. Will this help me achieve my goal? It's not distracting me from any other task, but it's just a very intense conversation. The last question is, will this impact a relationship that I want to keep? Will me fighting to get my point across? Will me fighting in this conversation impact this relationship? Will it cause us to not be able to work together? Will it cause us to not be able to walk around each other without being in disgruntled fellowship? These are the different types of things. Will it cause a rift in our relationship if this conversation continues or if it ends? Whatever that decision is, that should help you determine whether or not you need to continue in that battle. When it comes to being with a spouse, right? This battle, this taking a part in a fight against them, right? Not just having a disagreement, but in a battle where you're fighting against them. Will you continuing in this fight have an impact to your relationship? Will it stop you from being able to sleep and, to sleep together because you're going to be at odds with one another? Will it cause you not to be able to further parts of your relationship if you're just now dating or just getting to know one another, or if you're rebuilding a friendship, or if you're working on something? Will this impact that relationship? And if the answer is yes, then you want to choose the way you approach this battle wisely. If you continue to fight instead of working to resolve, if you continue to fight instead of working to understand, there will be an impact that will not necessarily be easy to change. So again, there are questions that you need to ask yourself. After you've asked yourself these questions, there are 2 things you need to know. And Kenny Rogers said it best. You need to know when to fold, and you need to know when to walk away. Well, I guess it's 3. You need to know when to fold, need to know when to walk away, and know when to run. What does it mean? To know when to fold, it means recognize when it's time to say enough is enough. I'm done. I've expended enough energy in this battle, and it's not changing. It's time to move on. If you want Swiss Chalet, sweetheart, let's go to Swiss Chalet. I'll go to KFC another day. It's not worth this battle. It's not worth this discussion. If you think that, this should be on letterhead, and I think it just should be a simple email, let's just go with the letterhead. It's fine. It's not worth this battle that we're in to continue to press forward, in my opinion, or in my thought process, or my point of view. It's not worth it. We have expended way too much energy on this. Let's move on. Know when to fold. And finally, know when to walk away. I put them together. Know when to run. Sometimes you have to know when to just let it go. The reality is you can't fix, solve, resolve, or change everything. And more importantly, you certainly are not intended to fix, solve, resolve, or change people, even though we try over and over again. You have to be able to determine when it's time to just let stuff go. And that might be physically, like in an actual situation where you need to let someone go, let a relationship go, let a conversation go, let a decision go, or emotionally, where you're able to finally just let go of the impact that it had, or the negativity of it, or, the frustration of it. Just let it go. Know when to say, just as we said in folding, enough is enough. In your mind, in your resolve, in holding on to it, you have to know when it's time to let go. We may not see eye to eye. We have to agree to disagree. We may not see eye to eye, and I can't get on with your thought process. I can't even agree to disagree and continue, right? We're agreeing to disagree, but I can't continue. I gotta go. If that's a relationship outside of marriage, if that's a relationship, if that's, again, an issue at work or wherever that applies, let it go. And even as you're preparing to walk into the fullness of your greatness, there are going to be certain things that you had originally planned to do. There are going to be certain things that you had originally thought were going to work out one way or another. And no matter how hard you fight, no matter how hard you try, it's not working. Let it go. There's probably another way, not even probably. There's another way that is going to help you to achieve your goals and to walk in your purpose. And the reason that you can't see it is because you won't let go of the original plan that you had. God has a plan, and his plan oftentimes looks way different than ours. But the greatest thing about it is his are always better than ours. So sometimes you just gotta let it go. And all of these things will help you to release your greatness, walk in the fullness of your authenticity, and fulfill your purpose, because someone is waiting for you. Thank you for joining us for the Fancy Thoughts podcast. I'm Francesca Hampton, and I look forward to you tuning in again next week. And remember, you are well able, fully capable, and properly equipped to accomplish everything you were created for. So go and make this week a great one.